Welcome to the HFY Tales channel. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the story. Enjoy and take care.
The sun, or rather the twin stars of the planet Zarithia, burned low on the horizon, casting a reddish-orange glow over the desolate battlefield. Captain Eric stalled and knelt among the debris, the smoldering remains of alien technology and the grotesque forms of fallen enemies surrounding him. His body ached from days of fighting, and the metallic tang of blood, his and others, clung to the air. Eric pushed back the visor of his combat suit, revealing sweat-slick black hair and piercing gray eyes. His mission was over. The enemy was defeated, their fleet obliterated. But there was no extraction. His team was gone, victims of an ambush that left him the only survivor. The silence was deafening, save for the occasional crackle of dying embers. As Eric moved to find shelter, he heard a faint noise, a soft, pained whimper. His hand instinctively went to his sidearm, his combat-honed reflexes flaring to life. Following the sound, he approached a pile of wreckage. Beneath twisted metal and shattered glass lay a figure. It wasn't human. The woman, if she could be called that, was unmistakably alien. Her skin shimmered faintly, like polished quartz, marked with luminescent patterns that pulsed faintly in the dim light. Gossamer-like wings, torn and battered, draped lifelessly at her sides. Her face, despite the alien features, slightly elongated eyes, high cheekbones, and a slender, almost fragile frame, held an expression of pain and fear that Eric recognized instantly. "Stay back," she croaked, her voice trembling as she tried to push herself up. She winced, clutching her side where a deep wound bled sluggishly. Eric raised his hand slowly, keeping his movements non-threatening. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, his voice steady. "You're injured. Let me help." Her eyes narrowed, glowing faintly in the twilight. Why would a human help me? Eric didn't have an answer that would satisfy her. Because it's the right thing to do. He crouched beside her, ignoring the way she flinched as he moved closer. The injury was bad, a jagged piece of shrapnel embedded near her ribs. She wouldn't last long without treatment. From his kit, he pulled a medical patch and antiseptic. "I'll have to remove the shrapnel," he explained, meeting her eyes. "It'll hurt, but this will stop the bleeding." She hesitated, her gaze flickering between his face and the patch in his hand. Finally, she gave a shaky nod. Eric worked quickly, his training taking over. Her sharp intake of breath as he pulled the metal-free tugged at something in him. For all her alienness, her pain was all too human. Once the wound was dressed, she slumped back, her breathing shallow but steady. "What's your name?" he asked, trying to distract her from the pain. "Liara," she whispered. Her voice carried a musical quality, even in its weakness. "And you?" "Eric." Liara closed her eyes briefly, her expression unreadable. "Why would you risk yourself for me? You don't even know who I am." "Maybe I don't need a reason," he said simply. Her lips twitched, almost forming a smile. Foolish but noble. Eric stayed with her until night fell, the stars above casting their cold light over the wreckage. He had no idea how they would survive the coming days, but as Liara drifted into an uneasy sleep, he felt a strange sense of purpose stirring within him. Morning on Zarithia was a stark reminder of the planet's unforgiving nature. The twin suns rose early, their combined heat creating waves of distortion over the barren landscape. Eric woke to the sound of Liara stirring beside him, her movements slow and deliberate. She was still weak, her injury demanding rest, but her eyes carried a steely resolve. Eric handed her a small canteen, watching as she drank cautiously. "We need to find shelter," he said, glancing at the horizon where jagged cliffs broke the monotony of the desert. "There's no way we'll survive out here without cover." Liara nodded, her glowing markings dim but pulsing faintly in agreement. "The cliffs may have caves. My people often sought refuge in places like that." Her words reminded Eric of how little he knew about her. As they packed up what little supplies Eric had salvaged from the wreckage, he studied her. Despite her alien features, her expressions, cautious, determined, were familiar. But he noticed the way she occasionally winced or clutched at her side, and the faint tremor in her hands. "You shouldn't be walking this much," Eric said, his tone firm. She glared at him, a flicker of pride sparking in her eyes. "I am not helpless, human." "Never said you were," Eric replied, shrugging. "But if you collapse out here, you're not doing either of us any favors." Liara's gaze softened slightly, though she said nothing. Eric took it as a win. The trek was grueling, the heat was relentless, and the dry air sapped their energy with every step. Eric took the lead, scanning for threats while Liara followed, her pace steady despite her injuries. Along the way, they encountered signs of life, or what was left of it. Skeletons of alien creatures littered the ground, their bones bleached by the suns. This planet was once lush. Liara murmured as they passed a particularly large skeleton, its ribcage forming a grotesque arch. "My people, we came here for sanctuary, but the war found us." Eric frowned. "The war that brought you and your people to this planet, was it against humans?" Liara hesitated before shaking her head. "No, it was another species. Ruthless. They called themselves the Krythak. They destroy without purpose. When they came for us, we ran. Zarithia was meant to be our haven." Her voice grew bitter. "It became our graveyard instead." Eric didn't respond immediately. He knew what it was like to lose everything, to fight against overwhelming odds. "You're not dead yet," he said after a moment. "And if there are others like you out there, they'll need you alive." Liara glanced at him, something unreadable in her expression. "You speak as though you understand." "I do," he said quietly, his gaze fixed on the cliffs ahead. By midday, they reached the base of the cliffs. Eric scouted ahead, his sidearm drawn, while Liara rested in the shade of a rock formation. The cliffs were riddled with caves, some small and shallow, others deep and foreboding. He chose one that seemed defensible, with a narrow entrance and enough room for both of them to move freely. Once inside, Eric set to work securing their temporary shelter. He fashioned a crude barricade from rocks and debris, blocking the entrance partially to deter any nocturnal predators. Liara watched him, her glowing markings brighter in the dim light of the cave. "You are resourceful," she said, her tone almost teasing. "For a human." "Eric Smirkid." "I'll take that as a compliment." As they settled in for the night, Liara finally let her guard down. She leaned against the cave wall, her wings folded neatly behind her, and studied Eric with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You risked your life for me," she said softly. "You could have left me there to die. I told you. You didn't need a reason." "I remember," she interrupted, her lips curving into a faint smile. "But I think there's more to it than that." Eric shrugged, not meeting her gaze. "Maybe I'm just tired of seeing people die." Her expression grew somber. "Even those who aren't your people?" "Especially those who aren't," Eric said, surprising himself with the honesty of his answer. Liara didn't respond immediately. Instead, she shifted closer to him, her glowing eyes searching his face. "Thank you," she said simply. For a moment, the cave was silent save for the distant howl of the wind. Eric glanced at Liara, noting the way her markings seemed to glow brighter as she looked at him. He cleared his throat, breaking the moment. "Get some rest," he said gruffly. "We'll need our strength tomorrow." Liara chuckled softly but obeyed, curling up against the wall. Eric stayed awake a while longer, his thoughts a tangled mess. Despite everything, he couldn't deny the connection forming between them. Strange, unspoken, but undeniably real. The following day brought new challenges. Eric and Liara ventured deeper into the cliffs, seeking fresh water and food. The rocky terrain was harsh, but they worked together, their movements becoming more coordinated as trust grew between them. As they navigated a narrow canyon, a guttural growl echoed through the air. Eric froze, his instincts flaring. From the shadows emerged a creature unlike anything he had encountered. A predator with 6 legs, razor-sharp claws, and a maw full of serrated teeth. Its eyes glinted with predatory intelligence as it stalked toward them. "Stay back," Eric ordered, stepping in front of Liara. His sidearm was already drawn, the safety off. The beast lunged with terrifying speed, forcing Eric to fire. The plasma bolt struck its hide, scorching it but failing to bring it down. Eric cursed under his breath, dodging a swipe of its massive claws. Liara, despite her weakened state, refused to remain idle. Her glowing markings flared brighter as she extended a delicate hand, her voice ringing out in an alien tongue. The creature hesitated, its movements faltering as if confused. "What are you doing?" Eric shouted, keeping his weapon trained on the beast. "I'm calming it," Liara replied through gritted teeth. Sweat beaded on her brow as she concentrated, her empathic abilities straining against the creature's primal rage. Finally, the beast snarled and retreated into the shadows, its growls fading into the distance. Eric lowered his weapon, his heart pounding. "You could have gotten yourself killed, and you would have wasted your ammunition on something we didn't need to kill." Liara shot back, her tone sharp but tired. "You're welcome." Despite himself, Eric smirked, noted, "But next time, warn me before you try to mind meld with a monster." As they rested in a shaded alcove, Eric handed Liara a protein bar from his ration pack. She accepted it hesitantly, her glowing eyes scanning the wrapper. "What is this substance?" she asked, sniffing it cautiously. "Food," Eric said with a chuckle. "Not gourmet, but it'll keep you alive." Liara took a tentative bite, her nose wrinkling. "It tastes unnatural." "It's not meant to taste good," Eric said, leaning back against the rock. "It's meant to keep soldiers from starving." Liara set the bar down, her expression thoughtful. "Your people must endure much hardship to prepare for war. Yet, you also show mercy. It's strange." Eric raised an eyebrow. "Strange how?" "In my culture," Liara began, her tone reflective, "mercy is reserved for kin. Outsiders are seen as threats, to be avoided or eliminated. Yet you, a stranger, save me without hesitation. Why?" Eric sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe I've seen enough death for one lifetime. Doesn't matter whose side they're on. Everyone loses in war." Liara studied him for a moment, her expression softening. "Perhaps your people are not as different from mine as I thought." Eric chuckled dryly. "Don't give us too much credit. Humans can be just as ruthless as anyone else." Liara tilted her head, her markings flickering faintly. "And yet, you are not." Their eyes met, the weight of her words lingering between them. Eric shifted uncomfortably, breaking the silence. "We should keep moving. No telling what else is out here." Liara smiled faintly but didn't argue. That evening, they returned to the cave, both exhausted from the day's exertions. Eric set up a small fire using scraps of dried vegetation, while Liara rested against the wall, her wings folded neatly behind her. As the firelight danced across the cave's walls, Liara spoke. "You said you've seen much death. Were you a soldier?" Eric nodded, poking the fire with a stick. "Still am, technically. Just not sure if there's anyone left to fight for." Liara's expression grew somber. "War took much from you." "It takes from everyone," Eric said, his voice low. "Family, friends, comrades, you name it." Liara hesitated before reaching out, placing a hand on his arm. Her touch was warm, her glowing markings pulsing gently. "You carry great pain, Eric, but you also carry strength. That is rare." Eric glanced at her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. For a moment, he considered brushing her off, but something in her gaze stopped him. "You've lost people too," he said quietly. "Your family?" Liara nodded, her eyes glistening. All gone. My clan was wiped out when the Krythak attacked. I was one of the few who escaped. A heavy silence fell between them, the weight of their shared losses creating an unspoken bond. Finally, Liara spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for not leaving me behind." Eric met her gaze, his resolve hardening. "You're not alone anymore." For the first time in what felt like forever, Liara smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that lit up her face. Eric felt a strange warmth in his chest, a flicker of hope in the midst of despair. The cave was eerily quiet the next morning, save for the faint hum of the wind beyond its narrow entrance. Eric woke to find Liara sitting cross-legged near the fire's embers, her glowing markings faint but steady. She seemed deep in thought, her wings tucked neatly against her back. "What's on your mind?" Eric asked, stretching his arms and wincing at the stiffness in his muscles. Liara glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "Something feels different. There is a presence nearby, a resonance." Eric frowned, pulling his sidearm closer. "Presence? You mean danger?" Liara shook her head. "Not danger. Something else." She stood slowly, her glowing eyes narrowing as she focused. "I need to see." Despite his reservations, Eric trusted her instincts. Packing their supplies, the two ventured out of the cave, following Liara's silent guidance. The cliffs stretched endlessly ahead, their jagged peaks cutting into the sky. Hours passed as they climbed higher, navigating treacherous terrain. Then Liara froze. "There," she said, pointing to a cluster of jagged rocks that formed a natural alcove. Eric squinted, spotting a faint flicker of light emanating from within. Inside the alcove, Eric found the source of the light, a small, crystalline device embedded in the rock. It pulsed faintly, its rhythm irregular but unmistakable. "What is this?" Eric asked, crouching to inspect it. Liara's expression was a mixture of hope and dread. "A distress beacon, one of my people's designs." Eric's eyes widened. "So there are survivors." Liara nodded, though her tone was cautious. "Perhaps, but the signal is weak, old. Whoever activated it may not still be alive." "We won't know unless we check," Eric said firmly. "Do you know where it's broadcasting to?" Liara touched the device, her fingers tracing the crystalline surface. Her markings brightened as the beacon responded, displaying a faint holographic map. "It's pointing to the northern plains. If my memory serves, that's where we established a temporary settlement before the Krythak attacked." Eric studied the map, noting the distance. "It'll take at least 2 days to get there on foot." Liara looked at him, determination in her eyes. "We have to try." Returning to their cave, Eric and Liara prepared for the journey. Eric fashioned makeshift weapons from scavenged materials, knowing they'd likely face threats along the way. Liara gathered herbs and minerals she recognized from her people's teachings, creating a rudimentary salve for their injuries. Before they left, Liara paused at the cave's entrance, her wings shimmering faintly in the sunlight. "This place kept us safe," she said softly. "It feels ungrateful to leave it." Eric stepped beside her, his tone gentle. "Safety won't matter if your people are still out there and need you." Liara nodded, her expression resolute. "Then let's go." The landscape shifted as they descended from the cliffs. The rocky terrain gave way to vast plains of alien grass, the golden blades swaying in the wind. Eric noticed Liara's pace quickening despite her injuries, her determination driving her forward. As night fell, they camped under the open sky. Eric started a small fire, its warmth a comfort against the chill. Liara sat beside him, her gaze fixed on the stars. "My people believe the stars hold our ancestors' spirits," she said, her voice soft. "When we feel lost, we look to them for guidance." Eric followed her gaze. "What do they tell you now?" Liara was silent for a moment before replying. "That I am not as lost as I thought." Eric smiled faintly but said nothing, letting the silence stretch between them. The stars above seemed brighter that night, their light a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the fragility of life within it. The second day of their journey brought trouble. As they crossed a shallow ravine, Eric spotted movement in the distance. A group of humanoid figures, heavily armed and moving with military precision, approached from the north. "Krythak," Liara whispered, her glowing markings dimming in fear. Eric's grip tightened on his sidearm. "We can't outrun them." "We don't need to," Liara said, her tone firm. "I know these creatures. They hunt in small packs, but are easily confused if their leader is neutralized." Eric nodded, his mind racing. "Then we set a trap." Using the ravine's natural terrain to their advantage, Eric and Liara lured the Krythak into a choke point. Eric fired precise shots, taking down two of the creatures before they could react. Liara used her empathic abilities to sow confusion among the others, her glowing markings flaring as she projected waves of disorientation. The leader, a hulking brute with cybernetic implants, charged at Eric, its massive weapon blazing. Eric narrowly dodged, rolling to the side and firing a shot that disabled its weapon. Liara seized the opportunity, her voice ringing out in an alien chant that caused the leader to stumble, clutching its head. Eric finished it with a well-placed shot, the creature collapsing in a heap. The remaining Krythak scattered, their cohesion shattered. As the dust settled, Eric turned to Liara, his breathing heavy. "You okay?" Liara nodded, though she looked drained. "I'll be fine, but we need to keep moving." Eric helped her to her feet, his respect for her growing with each passing moment. Together, they pressed on, the beacon's signal growing stronger with each step. The mining colony loomed ahead, a sprawling industrial fortress carved into the planet's rocky terrain. Its outer defenses were imposing. Tall, electrified fences, automated turrets, and patrolling Krythak soldiers with heavy weaponry. Smoke billowed from the chimneys of massive processing plants, the air thick with the stench of burning ore. Eric surveyed the scene through a pair of binoculars, his jaw tightening. This isn't going to be easy. Beside him, Liara crouched low, her glowing markings dim to avoid detection. The Krythak used fear to control their prisoners. "Many of my people will be too weak to fight back." Zethra, holding a crude but functional blade Eric had fashioned for him, looked uneasy. "And if they see us coming?" "They won't," Eric replied, his tone firm. "We'll use stealth to get in and hit them where it hurts." Nightfall brought a shroud of darkness, masking their movements as Eric led the group toward the colony's perimeter. Using a handheld device he had salvaged from the battlefield, Eric hacked into the fence's power grid, creating a temporary breach. "Stay close and stay quiet," he whispered, gesturing for the others to follow. The group slipped through the fence and into the shadows of the facility. Eric's military training shone as he guided them through the labyrinth of machinery and storage containers. They avoided the patrols, using the ambient noise of the machinery to mask their movements. Liara's empathic abilities proved invaluable. She detected the Krythak guards' emotional states, warning Eric of their positions before they came into view. It was an eerie but effective method, and Eric found himself relying on her more than he anticipated. As they approached the detention area, a patrol of 3 Krythak soldiers blocked their path. Eric gestured for the others to stay back, motioning to Liara to assist him. The first guard fell silently, Eric's knife finding its mark. The second turned, only to be disoriented by Liara's empathic pulse, her glowing markings flaring briefly. Eric dispatched the third with a precise shot from his silent sidearm. Zethra and the others looked on in awe as Eric motioned for them to move forward. "This is where it gets tricky," he said. "The prisoners will likely be heavily guarded." Liara nodded. "We'll free them, no matter the cost." The detention area was a grim sight. Rows of makeshift cells lined the walls, each holding malnourished and despondent Zephyrians. Their glowing markings were faint, their wings tattered, but their eyes sparkled with faint hope when they saw Liara. She approached the nearest cell, placing a hand on the bars. "You're safe now," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Eric worked quickly to disable the locks, freeing the prisoners one by one. As they emerged, Zethra and the other survivors reassured them, rallying their spirits. "Can they fight?" Eric asked Liara, eyeing the frail figures. "Not all of them," she admitted, "but those who can will do so willingly." As they escorted the prisoners toward the breach in the fence, a shrill alarm pierced the air. The Krythak had discovered them. "Move!" Eric barked, taking point as the group broke into a sprint. Krythak's soldiers poured into the detention area, their weapons blazing. Eric and Liara provided cover fire, taking down enemies with ruthless efficiency. Zethra, despite his inexperience, fought bravely, shielding the weaker prisoners. A Krythak brute, towering and heavily armored, charged at them, its roar deafening. Eric barely dodged its first swing, retaliating with a burst of plasma fire. Liara used her empathic abilities to disorient the brute, giving Eric the opening he needed to land a lethal shot. "Keep moving," Eric shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The group reached the breach in the fence, but the Krythak were closing in fast. Eric set explosives on the perimeter, buying them precious time as the fence erupted in a fiery explosion. Once outside, they retreated to the cover of the cliffs. Eric and Liara stayed behind to ensure no one was left behind, their partnership seamless as they fought off the last of the Krythak pursuers. Finally, when the dust settled, Eric turned to Liara, his breathing ragged. "Everyone accounted for?" Liara nodded, her markings glowing faintly in the darkness. "We did it." Eric allowed himself a small smile. "Yeah, we did." Back at their temporary hideout, the rescued Zephyrians gathered around a small fire. Despite their exhaustion, there was a palpable sense of hope in the air. For the first time in years, they were free. Liara sat beside Eric, her wings folded neatly as she watched the others. "You gave them something they thought they'd lost," she said quietly. "A future." Eric shook his head. "We gave them a chance. The rest is up to them." Liara placed a hand on his arm, her touch warm and steady. "No matter what happens next, I'll always be grateful to you." Eric met her gaze, the weight of her words settling over him. "We're not done yet. The Krythak won't stop coming after them." "Then we'll fight," Liara said, her voice firm. "Together." As the firelight flickered, Eric felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known in years. With Liara and her people by his side, he knew they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. The survivors, though weary, began rebuilding their strength. They worked together to establish a defensible hideout in the cliffs, scavenging supplies from the remains of the Krythak outpost. Eric took charge of organizing defenses, while Liara led her people in rediscovering their culture and traditions. Eric sat sharpening a blade by the fire as Zethra approached. The young Zephyrian hesitated before speaking. "You've done more for us than I thought any outsider would." Eric looked up, his expression neutral. "You don't owe me anything. I'm here because Liara asked for help." Zethra nodded. "Still, we owe you our lives. Many of us thought humans were only capable of destruction. You've shown us otherwise." Liara joined them, her glowing markings brighter than they'd been since Eric met her. "Zethra's right. You've given us more than survival. You've given us hope." Eric shrugged off their gratitude, but a faint smile tugged at his lips. "Hope's a good start, but we'll need more than that if we're going to keep the Krythak at bay." That night, the elder Zephyrian survivor, Erin, summoned Eric and Liara. Her frail wings fluttered faintly as she gestured for them to sit. "There is something you must know," Erin said, her voice trembling with age. "Long ago, our ancestors spoke of a human who would come to our aid in our darkest hour. They called him the Bearer of Light, a warrior who would bridge the gap between our peoples." Eric frowned. "I'm no savior. I'm just a soldier doing what needs to be done." Aaron smiled faintly. Perhaps that is exactly why you're the one. You see us not as enemies or burdens, but as equals. That is a rare quality, Eric stalled in. Liara's hand brushed Eric's, her touch grounding him. Whether you believe it or not, you've already begun fulfilling the prophecy. Eric sighed, the weight of their words settling heavily on his shoulders. If it means keeping you all alive, I'll do whatever it takes. Later that evening, Eric sat on a rocky outcrop overlooking the plains. The stars above seemed impossibly vast, a reminder of the universe's indifference. Liara joined him, her wings catching the starlight. You don't have to bear this alone, she said, her voice soft. Eric glanced at her. I've spent most of my life fighting for people who didn't care whether I lived or died. It's different with you. Liara tilted her head, her glowing eyes meeting his. Different how? You make it feel worth it, Eric admitted, his voice low. Like there's more to this fight than just survival. Liara smiled, a rare and genuine expression. Then let me vow something to you, Eric. No matter what happens, I'll stand by your side. You've given me and my people a second chance. I'll make you happy, no matter what. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Eric didn't respond immediately, but when he finally spoke, his voice was softer. I don't know if I deserve that. You do, Liara said firmly. More than anyone I've ever known. For the first time in years, Eric allowed himself to believe her. The next morning, Eric addressed the group. The Krythak won't stop. They'll come back with more troops, more weapons. If we want to survive, we need to be ready. The survivors nodded, their resolve solidifying. Liara stepped forward, her presence commanding. We are not the weak, scattered people the Krythak think we are. With Eric's help, we can fight back. Together, they began training, combining Zephyrian abilities with Eric's tactical knowledge. Liara honed her empathic powers to disrupt enemy cohesion, while Eric taught the survivors how to use scavenged weapons effectively. Each day brought progress and with it, a growing sense of unity. As the days turned to weeks, the survivors transformed from a group of broken refugees into a community bound by purpose. Eric and Liara worked tirelessly, their partnership deepening as they faced each challenge together. One evening, as the suns dipped below the horizon, Eric stood with Liara overlooking the settlement. The faint glow of the survivors' markings lit the area like fireflies, a testament to their resilience. We've come a long way, Eric said, his tone thoughtful. Liara nodded, her wings shifting in the cool breeze. And we still have far to go. But with you here, I believe we can do it. Eric turned to her, a rare smile on his face. You've got a lot of faith in me. Liara met his gaze, her expression unwavering. You've earned it. As the stars appeared one by one, Eric felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Together, they had a chance to build something lasting, a future worth fighting for.